From the studios, Election Yard is here. We are talking about Virginia. Probably thinking to yourself, hey, Virginia just had an election back in November. Didn't we already talk about them? Well, we're talking about Virginia again because in April, Virginia will have a referendum on redistricting. This would be a constitutional amendment, if it's passed, which would effectively accomplish the same thing that California did, which is to temporarily, according to them, we'll go through the ballot wording, temporarily amend the Virginia Constitution to suspend the Independent Redistricting Committee and allow the Democrats to shove through what they would call a 10-to-1 map. So this 10-to-1 map, as in 10 Democrats, 1 Republican. The map is already out there. You can find it. But the reason we're doing this video today on March 6th is because early voting starts today in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Now, it is not anything like what we were just talking about with the Texas primary. Now, in Texas, you only get 10 days to vote early in your primary elections there. Well, in Virginia, before any election, you've got quite a while. In fact, early voting is going to go for about a month and a half. So we'll go through the timetable in a minute. But obviously, just setting the stage for this, the redistricting wars that have been going on since last year, that has made this possible. What Virginia is trying to do. Of course, Virginia in November also had a change in power. Now, the state legislature in Virginia, the General Assembly, the state legislature was controlled by Democrats. But up until January, Virginia had a Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin, who would have never in 1,000 years gone along with something like this. Well, now enter Democrat Abigail Spanberger. She is the governor. She is all in on this amendment. She even put out an ad the other day where she explained why she's supporting it. So obviously the Democrats are going to come out in full force to support this and to try to, in their words, restore fairness. But before we get into that, let's look at the actual wording of the ballot question. So when you go to the voting booth in Virginia, when they hand you your ballot and you go and they give you a little pen to fill in your oval, this is what it's going to say. Question: should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional districts to restore fairness in the upcoming elections while ensuring Virginia's standard redistricting process resumes for all future redistricting after the 2030 census? So that is how it will look word for word. On the ballot, you can tell that Democrats wrote that. The Republicans certainly did not. But that's pretty much what California was trying to do too. This is basically the Virginia Democrats' way of saying, hey, look, Republicans are trying to rig the maps in other states. We just want the temporary ability to change our maps to offset that. And don't worry, by 2030, hopefully this is all blown over and then we can go back to normal. That's basically what this is saying. So a yes vote on this. If you're supporting the yes side, obviously your main thing is trying to restore balance, because you saw what the Republicans, for example, did in Texas. You saw what the Republicans did next door in North Carolina. Because actually what happened in North Carolina, that wasn't just one gerrymander, that was actually 2 gerrymanders. So North Carolina, they had 14 seats and they used to be roughly 7-7 Republicans and Democrats. So then they did the first gerrymander to get it up to I think 10-4. And now they're doing another one for this election, I believe, to try to get it up to 11-3 in favor of the Republicans. But then you also see Texas. Texas tried to draw 5 more Republican seats. Florida's been talking about it. As far as I know, they haven't done anything. So one phrase that I have heard over and over again from Democrats is unilateral disarmament. I think there's a feeling amongst Democrats that maybe in the past they would have probably just kind of let the Republicans get away with it. But this time, Democrats in Virginia, like Democrats in California, are basically saying, we're not going to let you do that. So if you're going to rig your maps, then we're going to rig our maps. So that's basically what all of this is about. I'm sure most of you know that at this point, but that's the long and short of it. But if you're on the no side, you would probably say, well, Virginia voters overwhelmingly approved the constitutional amendment to make the redistricting commission possible. Our maps in Virginia are as fair as they're going to get. Virginians like fairness, which I think they do like fairness. But obviously, the Republicans in the Virginia delegation have been crying foul about this, whether you're Rob Whitman or Jen Kiggins or whatever. They've all been vocal about how opposed they are to this, and I think that might also just be a function of the fact that they're both probably going to lose if this passes. That's the no side of it, although even though it's not their state, I don't recall any of them complaining when some of these other states pass gerrymanders without going to the voters first. I mean, at least you can say, whether it passes or it doesn't, at least you could say California, which it did pass, and Virginia, at least they're going to the voters about it to try to get them on the record. But they have to also. Because this is a constitutional amendment, so keep that in mind. But let's just go through a little timeline of the events. We'll have more to say on this referendum over the coming weeks. There hasn't been a lot of opinion polling on it yet. You would think, given the Democratic bent of the state, that yes probably has an advantage. I can't really back that up with data yet because there isn't much. You may very well get some people, for example, who might have voted for Abigail Spanberger in November who are uncomfortable with this. You might also be able to expect that this will be a lower turnout sort of thing because this is April 21st is when the election day is happening for this referendum. You know, a spring election, people are starting to get out and do things again. So, and very much an off-cycle election, so you don't know what the turnout's going to be like. You would think that the most motivated voters on either side are going to get out. There's still a lot more to determine as far as how this could potentially go. But let's just go through the timeline of events. So early voting opens today, March 6th. And this is the timeline of events from the Virginia Department of Elections. So April 10th, that is the last day you can request a mail ballot. April 14th is the last day you can update your voter registration and still be able to vote. April 18th, which is a Saturday, is the last day of early voting in Virginia. And if you are planning to vote early in Virginia, they do have county registrars or independent city registrars where you can go vote at the Board of Elections in your town or county or whatever. And they also will probably have satellite locations open towards the end of the process. So check your local elections website out for that. And then April 21st, the Tuesday, that is election day. The polls open at 6 a.m. Eastern, close at 7 p.m. Eastern. So the last thing I will mention here before we wrap this up, the courts have gotten involved in this, as I'm sure some political observers in and around Virginia are already aware of. The Republicans have gone to the courts to try to stop the referendum from happening. What they did was they would file suit against it. They went out to Tazewell County, which is a very friendly venue to them, to try to get the referendum stopped. The state Supreme Court has weighed in. Basically, what they said is, we're going to let the referendum happen, but then probably at some point down the road, we're going to decide on the merits of the case. So the way it stands right now, after all of the legal battles and the back and forth, is that the referendum is going to happen in April, and early voting did start today. But at some point after the referendum, we will probably hear the state Supreme Court's opinion on this, and as to whether or not the results of the referendum stand, assuming it passes. If it doesn't pass, then I think that's pretty much a moot point. But if it does pass, then I think after that, we're going to have to wait for the state Supreme Court to make their decision as to whether or not the referendum was legally taken, whether or not it was constitutionally taken, because that was part of the argument, that it was too short of a timetable and that they can't do this. So we will just have to see how that goes, but the referendum will take place. So the Virginia referendum is underway. What's going to happen? If you want to find out, you got to stick around at Election Yard, like and subscribe. Follow us on social media. We'll see you soon.